My God, it's Stone Cold. The Hellraiser is back.
Here we go. Evolution of the Shield.
John Cena versus the Showstopper.
Hulk Hogan and The Rock in the same ring.
You will never take my place at the head of the table.
Undertaker with a Hell's Gate submission. Oh my God. What?
My God, Michaels just kicked Cena's head off.
The Monday Night Wars have come to WrestleMania.
It'll be The Rock. It'll be Austin one-on-one.
Third and five to the Undertaker.
Do you believe in miracles?
The streak is over.
Hey, what's up, guys, and welcome back to Rivalries on the WWE Podcast on this Friday, October 15th, as we are just 6 days away from the infamous Crown Jewel pay-per-view that, is this pay-per-view gonna mean anything, honestly? Like, if no titles end up changing hands, which I believe is a true possibility, whether it be Big E versus Drew or Brock versus Roman, which, I mean, there's the possibility that Brock wins, but I don't see it happening. And then the women's championship match, I just don't know if this pay-per-view in the grand scheme of things is going to mean a whole lot, but I digress. I guess that every time they go to to Saudi Arabia, they have to just put on a spectacle to try and make it feel like the biggest show of shows and whatnot. But we're not here to talk about Crown Jewel. We are here to talk about rivalries, and we are going back to the early to mid 2000s for this one, for something that wasn't a heated rivalry or a historic rivalry by any means, but one that I find one of the most funny and comedic rivalries of all time, and that is The Rock versus Jonathan Coachman. And I mean, I kind of touched on one of these programs again with The Rock, but this time that was with the Hurricane. And I think The Rock had a very good chemistry with making maybe undercard guys, or in this case, a ring announcer or a commentator, feel very, very relevant. And his chemistry with the coach was something that I don't think we're ever going to see again. And The Rock's backstage interviews with numerous reporters is something that I felt was one of the most endearing qualities about him. Going back to when it was Kevin Kelly, and I remember he used to call him, I can't imagine this would be okay to say on television nowadays, but he used to call him a hermaphrodite and then refer to him as Hermie, or he made him do an entire interviewing The Rock with his nose stuck up, with his finger stuck up his nose. And, then you had him with Lillian Garcia always kind of making passive comments about, his strudel or pie or hitting on her in various other ways. But then you got to Jonathan Coachman, and obviously it started with him kind of just trolling Coach like he did with Kevin Kelly. And I remember particularly, I believe it was backstage at WrestleMania 18 before The Rock's match with Hulk Hogan, where he had Coach do a dance backstage, and then Coach starts shaking his backside, and then The Rock literally just kicks him in the backside out of the camera picture, and then just cuts the rest of the promo by himself. But this program, and I don't even know if you could really call it a program or a rivalry, but this, I guess, beef between the two, it is a rivalry when it really gets down to it, just not a real physical one because the coach was just a ring announcer. This rivalry really only took off to the grand scheme of things when the coach turned heel in the summer of 2003. When he aligned himself with Eric Bischoff. And I remember the first time he did so, he hit Shane McMahon in the back with a chair at McMahon's match against Bischoff at SummerSlam 2003. So Bischoff had about 6 to 7 months to marinate as a new look, kind of authority figure heel on Monday Night Raw while The Rock was away, because by the time mid-2003 had rolled around, The Rock was long gone to Hollywood and was on an extremely, extremely part-time basis. But one of his appearances was when he came back to help Mick Foley combat Evolution leading into WrestleMania 20. And on one of these episodes of Raw leading into WrestleMania 20, The Rock encounters the Hurricane and Rosie backstage, and them now because The Rock was a babyface at this time. He makes amends with Hurricane and Rosie, but he comes across a familiar foe, but this familiar foe was not the same guy he had seen the last time they had crossed paths.
Now what? Well, along those lines. Hold on. Along those lines, young Rosie and I went to see a sneak preview of Walking Tall, and I must say, it was very, very good. Congratulations.
Oh, cool, man. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Thank you. Now, what about you? What do you think?
Actually, he went to get some juji fruits, got lost, ended up in the wrong theater. Anyway, man, I want to say it's good to have you back.
Thank you.
And this time on the side of justice, no less.
Thank you.
But something's different. You remind me of someone else.
Well, yeah, hell, well, you two remind The Rock of somebody else, too. Right here, we got Hamburger and Grimace up in the house. I'm playing, I'm kidding, I'm playing. You know, I'm playing.
But seriously, I think it's the hair, the goatee. You remind me of...
Well. Good to see you, Rock. So, you come back to Raw to sport the coach look? Well, let me tell you something. If you work just a little bit harder, you could be an exact double. Baby!
You could be an exact double, baby. Shut up, coach. Idiot, when did you turn into this? Shut up. Listen, let The Rock explain to you. The Rock came here to present Mick Foley with This Is Your Life. It's going to be an amazing night. Do you understand that? And if you want a sneak preview, check it out, Hurricane. Listen, this is your life, coach. This is what your life is like. Oh, hey, Mr. Bischoff, how you doing? How can I kiss your ass tonight? Yeah, that's it. Or maybe, Mr. Bischoff, maybe I could give you one of them long kisses. Or maybe I could give you a whole bunch of short kisses. How about that?
That's not accurate at all. You know that.
Oh, really? It's not? Well, I'll tell you what, Coach. Well, right behind you, there's Mr. Bischoff right there. Why don't you tell him to his face?
Where's he at?
Right there, you punk.
So there's the first time they had crossed paths since the coach had turned heel. And, you know, it was always the same dynamic with The Rock and the coach, where the coach was just a generic babyface announcer backstage, as we see with, let's say, Caleb Braxton nowadays. But The Rock would just troll him to the absolute possible limit and just make fun of the coach and make him dance and call him stupid or a jabroni and all these things. And they always just had such an amazing chemistry. But now with The Rock coming back to encounter the coach, who really had developed his character to a very entertaining point. Like, I don't think people remember and realize just how good the coach was as, like, a very, like, for lack of better terms, ass kisser to Eric Bischoff at this point, kind of taking the place of Chief Morley, who was kind of in that position in early 2003, and Chief Morley, aka Val Venus. So The Rock comes back, and like the Hurricane said before the coach showed up in that clip, is that The Rock did kind of look similar to the coach here on several levels. It was the first time The Rock had come back with a goatee. He had his shaved head, but he had his shaved head as well the last time he had come back. And aside from that, The Rock was pretty thin at this time. Not to say that he wasn't in shape, still an amazing athlete, but he wasn't the super jacked guy that we've come to know him as today, like kind of like a fitness icon in the social media world. So The Rock did have a similar look to the coach, and it was more that the coach was trying to look like The Rock if you really like narrowed it down to it. But there were some striking similarities between the two of these guys. So that's the extent of this encounter between the two. But over the course of 2004, The Rock would come back several times. And the next time he would come back would be to aid a fan favorite and one of the more, how would you say, controversial characters of that generation and possibly of all time in Eugene. And Eugene was basically run out of Monday Night Raw by the coach, bullied for a lack of better terms, and told to get out of the ring and never ever come back. And as Eugene was making his way up the ramp, who was a mentally disabled character, he was crying and waving goodbye to the fans until he got a surprise return. So The Rock's music hits, the place goes absolutely ballistic. He leads Eugene back to the ring. And at this point, you have to realize that The Rock's appearances were few and far between. He was over a year removed from being a full-time competitor in WWE. He already had several leading roles in Hollywood under his belt at this point, most notably The Rundown and Walking Tall. And when he was going to come back, it was always just going to be a spontaneous segment, mostly driven towards comedy. And at this point in time, it is so crazy to say, but his best comedic bits were with the coach. And it was pretty cool to see that at this point in time, The Rock would come back to try and elevate a guy like Eugene, who, believe it or not, they were kind of pushing into the main event scene at this point. You know, this kind of climaxed at a match with Eugene and Triple H at SummerSlam at that year's SummerSlam, if I'm not mistaken. So The Rock comes to the ring and, in classic Rock fashion, does his whole shtick. You know, finally The Rock has come back to blah, 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 blah. He tells Eugene that he's not going anywhere. And then he has some choice words for the coach. And I gotta tell you, The Rock ripping on the coach just never, ever gets old. And it was even more funny because now the coach was positioned as a heel and meant to be hated on by the rest of the crowd. And let me tell you, when The Rock got going on the coach this time around, it was just as funny as ever.
Looking mad all over it. Look at that sourpuss look on the face. You didn't like when they were chanting that? Oh, is that it? I'll tell you what. Did you like when they were chanting stuff, Eugene? Well, I'll tell you what, before the screw the coach chant comes on, there's another chant. San Diego will chant it. All around the world will chant it every single week. They will be calling Coach a popcorn fart.
Oh, no! Wow. These people do anything Rock says.
What do you mean it's not funny? Why is it not funny? Everybody's chanting popcorn fart. The Rock knows damn well that JR up there, King, they were chanting popcorn fart. Hey! Rock saw Lillian. Hey, how you doing, honey? Oh. Yeah. You were chanting popcorn fart. Oh, yeah.
That's real funny, Rock, real funny. I guess you need to do this kind of stuff to make you feel better about yourself. You see, the last time we saw each other, you were getting your ass kicked all over Madison Square Garden at WrestleMania 20. So you have no right to be making fun of the coach.
Wow. Coach let a little smack down on the dome down there, didn't he? It's all cocky and confident.
Rock will give it to you. Yeah, Coach, The Rock lost, but really, is that what you think, Coach?
That's exactly what I think.
It doesn't matter what you think.
So I even got to give it to Coach here. He was a brilliant antagonist in all of this. He really, truly was. And obviously The Rock is brilliant. He can pretty much cut a promo with a broomstick if it really came down to it. You know, he gets the crowd involved. And that popcorn fart, easy enough for me to say, chant, that really did catch on because a week or two later, Monday Night Raw came to Montreal, which I attended, and people were chanting popcorn fart at the Coach. And it really elevated the Coach as well to, I guess maybe not, you can't really say he's a main event level heel because he was just kind of a announcer, managerial figure predominantly, and he also got a spot on the commentator's booth as well eventually, alongside Jerry Lawler and Jim Ross. A very good role for him, I may add. But it was good to kind of cement the Coach as a legitimate and prominent figure, at least in the Raw landscape. And eventually what was the title they gave him? The executive assistant to Mr. McMahon. Following Bischoff's departure from his on-screen role as the general manager, Coach kind of became the de facto Raw GM for about a year, I want to say. And I got to tell you, The Rock being able to come back and do these several promos with the Coach really elevated the Coach's reputability to be in that role. And, you know, the Coach had several funny moments and programs aside from just with The Rock. Like, I don't know if you guys remember it, but in the summer of 2006, when Degeneration X was back, there was an entire Monday Night Raw where they were just chasing the Coach around the arena. And let me tell you, that was some funny stuff. And obviously, it's in large part to how great Shawn Michaels and Triple H were and how great The Rock was. But you got to give it to the Coach as well. He was a hell of an entertainer. I found him funny. He was a great antagonist and a very good, quote-unquote, bad guy authority figure. But in terms of this particular segment, The Rock and Eugene continue making fun of the Coach, running him down, until one of the Coach's allies gets involved and all hell breaks loose in the ring. So it culminates with Eugene giving the Coach the people's elbow, and this helped elevate Eugene as well, as most as they possibly could, right? Like, how far could you possibly go with the Eugene, mentally challenged type of character? But I mean, The Rock coming back, being able to put himself in a program like this to elevate Eugene and the Coach says a lot about what he was able to contribute to the company at this time. Like, obviously, he could have come back and put himself in any which kind of program he wanted to. Look at part-timers nowadays. Like, Goldberg comes back, he's in title pictures left, right, and center. Ditto for Brock Lesnar, even Edge to an extent. So for The Rock to be able to come back several times and just be able to elevate undercard guys who really needed the legitimacy speaks volumes to where he was at in his career and what he was willing to do for the company. But The Rock's rivalry, and I find it so funny to refer to it as a rivalry because of just, it's the coach, right? Like, what kind of rivalry could it really be? It didn't end there. As in August of 2004, at this point, the coach was hosting the Raw Diva Search. And, the Diva Search, obviously a very dated type of contest, and it really kind of is a microcosm of how WWE used to objectify women in a lot of ways. But at the time, it was a big thing, and it was a big hit for Monday Night Raw. And the coach was the guy running the contest. And on this particular night, he says that this night's challenge will be for all of them to speak how much they like the coach or compliment the coach. But that didn't go over well with the fans, and clearly someone was listening in the back.
Oh, great. I really am. Oh, wait a minute. But now that I think about it, I don't think 2 minutes is nearly long enough to tell everybody what you think of the coach. So what I thought we would probably do instead of 2 minutes, let's make it 5 minutes. Everybody wants to hear.
It's the Rock!
Coach, you come out here, you run your mouth. You say they've got 5 minutes to say how much they like the coach. Well, I'll tell you what, The Rock says you got 5 seconds to get out of the ring for The Rock. Gives you an ass whooping of a lifetime.
It really never got old with The Rock and Coach, and and obviously the coach just scurries off to the back like a coward that he is, and The Rock takes over the Diva Search. And, it just speaks volumes to how they were building the coach as just this slimy type of rad authority figure. And obviously he's taking advantage of young women trying to get a career in the company by trying to tell them what they have to do to win a contest, by telling the coach how great he really is and whatnot. And then The Rock comes out and makes the save and goes on to have an incredibly entertaining promo where he brings out Tajiri with a pie eating contest and whatnot. But that does not end there, as the coach would not go into the night lightly and comes back with some backup.
Oh, is that it? Are there more? Did we do 5 already?
Here you go, work it up. Now what?
Rock, ha-ha time is over. It's over. I am sick and tired of you embarrassing me every time you come out on the show. Last time we were here, you embarrassed these two when you came out on the show. So I'll tell you what's going to happen right now. The Rock show is over. The Rock show is over. The three of us are going to come down there, give him a Chinese ass whooping, and Rock, look me straight in the eyes. We're going to give you, as you like to say, a people's ass whooping of a lifetime.
Okay, I'll tell you what, Tajiri, let's move these pies out of the way. I'm going to show you how I'm going to respond to this. Ladies, leave the ring. Thank you for your participation.
Some of the best pie eating I've ever seen.
Up the side of the ramp.
Look at Coach. He lost his mind. He doesn't think.
Come on, Mama, there's fixing to be a homicide up in this sumbitch. Move! I'll tell you what, The Rock will tell you like this in a couple different languages. Out of respect for my boy Tajiri, it's in Chinese. Ching bang ding dao! And what that means, and my boy Meth can attest to this, is that means like this, we say this good old-fashioned American style, just bring it, bitch! Oh!
Oh my my God. Even how they were referring to Tajiri as Chinese, as he was clearly Japanese. There was the Japanese logo on his tights. It just speaks volumes to where I guess we were as a society, what was this, 17 years ago? And, it was funny as hell, but like, you can't say those things in today's modern and social environment. But, even the coach coming back, like him saying that every time you come out here, you embarrass me, you make a fool of me. And there was a history between The Rock and La Resistance because, and for guys that don't know who La Resistance were, they were a French tag team originally from France and then later said that they were from Quebec, which I always found hilarious because I'm from Quebec. And it was so funny because I remember they won the tag team championships in Montreal one time as heels and the place going absolutely ballistic because, as we say in French, they were good chez nous and from Montreal and whatnot. And they were a very good, underrated heel tag team. And as you guys may remember, Sylvain Grenier was the crooked referee that screwed Hulk Hogan, ironically, against The Rock at No Way Out 2003. So the coach and La Resistance come out, they start attacking The Rock and Tajiri, and then Rhino comes to the ring and evens the odds. And eventually it comes down to the coach alone in the middle of the ring with The Rock, Rhino, and Tajiri surrounding him. And what came next was probably one of the most funny visuals and audios you will hear as the coach really steps up to The Rock. And what was crazy about this moment, and if you guys are Patreons of the show, you'll know this because when Matt had just had his baby and I tagged in for him on Wrestling Nostalgia, I covered this particular moment in WWE because it was the final time that The Rock would make an in-ring appearance until his eventual return on Valentine's Day in 2011. So 6.5 years went by with The Rock not stepping foot in a WWE ring, and this was the final moment that we saw him. And for him to come out and the lasting image is him hitting a people's elbow on the coach tells you where they were really going with the coach at the time. And maybe you guys could scoff at it, but if you watched during this era, you knew that the coach was a prominent figure on Monday Night Raw. And in my mind, this kind of legitimized the coach as, I would say, a borderline Hall of Fame managerial / announcer figure in the history of the company. And probably one of the reasons why he got so popular and eventually ended up on ESPN SportsCenter in, I believe, the early 2010s. So this went a long way in legitimizing the coach as a big-time player as far as managerial figures go. And as for The Rock, we didn't see him for 6.5 years, and it's very telling about the type of guy he was at the time to come back and kind of elevate talents like La Resistance, Rhino, and Tajiri to, big prominent television times, because this was a segment that took up almost half an hour on Monday Night Raw that was only 2 hours at the time. So a quarter of the show was taken up with guys who were in the tag team divisions and the Raw Diva Search and the coach. And I mean, it really tells you something about The Rock's willingness to come back and help talent lower down the card, as opposed to just walking in and inserting himself to go, let's say, nose to nose with Triple H, who was the world heavyweight champion at this point in time. Or actually, no, Randy Orton had just won the belt in late August. But I mean, I know this isn't really a historic rivalry by any stretch of the imagination, or even maybe a lot of you think it's a rivalry not worth talking about, but I think it is because of several reasons. Number one, you want to know how comedy's done? Refer to The Rock and the coach. That was just a perfect moment, or not even moment, sequence of moments, or series of moments rather, of just hilarious like trolling by The Rock on Coach, the Coach playing the antagonistic part super well, and even when he was a babyface, let's say in the early 2000s, just kind of being pushed around and bullied by The Rock and made fun of and teased. It was just great comedic television at the time. But even more so than that, you see how a guy could be made in the Coach by getting the rub from The Rock, and that doesn't always work with, in-ring talents, because look at what they're doing with Paul Heyman and Caleb Braxton right now. Like, I think in a lot of ways, the interactions between Paul Heyman and Caleb Braxton are really help legitimizing Caleb Braxton as a backstage announce figure. And now everyone knows who Caleb Braxton is. And obviously they caught lightning in a bottle with the chemistry between Paul Heyman and Caleb Braxton. But I think in a lot of ways it is similar to The Rock and the Coach back in this day. And obviously Paul Heyman is nowhere near what The Rock was, as he wasn't an in-ring competitor. But promo-wise, you can make the case that Paul Heyman's the best of all time, and him helping out Caleb Braxton will help legitimize her in the long run. But anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed The Rock versus Coach for this week, because that's all I got. I hope I gave you some laughs, and we will maybe get back to a more serious rivalry this time next week. But as always, you can follow me on Twitter at ADeMarco25. You can follow Matt on Twitter at wrestling_audio, or you can email him at realwwepodcast@gmail.com. Anyway, guys, stay safe out there, and I will talk to you next week.